Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Brief. Today, we're very, very fortunate to have Melissa DiMuro with us. Melissa, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Melissa is the Chief People, Culture, and Marketing Officer at Limbach. What a mouthful that is. I love that. We're going to dive into that deeper after we get started here a bit. But to kick us off, why don't you take us through a bit of a tour of what you did in your career leading up to now?
Yeah, sure. So if I start way back, the foundation growing up, I grew up in a manufacturing household and I always had aspirations to go to college. I wanted to at least get a bachelor's degree. I dreamed of a master's degree, but really didn't have a lot of people around me that had done that or that I could look up to and see. So I was lucky enough to find my way into university early at 16 at the University of Cincinnati through a program my school had, and ultimately thought I'd be a psychologist. I love how humans work, how people make decisions. Like, I love that space. And was lucky enough that I had some strong mentors in that program that helped me see that although psychology is the foundation of human behavior, my specialty was really in the groups at work and organizational psychology, and ultimately pointed me toward HR. I had my first internship while I was in college and really found that I had a passion around the people side of a business. And in particular, the idea that I can make work better for people. I spent 3 years in printing in manufacturing settings, went to grad school. And at the time I was graduating from grad school, realized that I wanted to try something beyond my current space. So that's when I joined GE over in their aviation business. I'm from Cincinnati and their headquarters is there. And that was always something, driving up and down 75. I thought one day maybe I could do that. Maybe I could work there. I spent about 15 years there, starting in manufacturing, again, back to the roots. Had my first global business there, 7 different countries, learning how to manage things across a diverse workforce. Went on to their HR leadership program, did an acquisition in the Czech Republic, made my way up to Boston, got my hands into manufacturing in that space, and then ultimately decided to make a transition into engineering. I spent the next 10 years building up my engineering expertise and was fortunate enough to be in the business at a time where we were doing record new product introductions in that space. We grew our engineering team that I had responsibility for in the design space by 5x over 5 years. So that was a wild time to be part of that team. And it was really great, really knowing that you were contributing to the future technology portfolio of the company. And then got pulled into a specialty role for all of engineering globally for the business, focused on organization and talent development. And in that space, I got to see business through a whole new lens at a different altitude and different considerations that I had ever seen before. We went through large scale restructuring, different activities that I had to lead there, and then ultimately went back out into the business into ceramic matrix composites, which is basically the sweet spot of the most advanced technology back at that moment when I was in the business, and got a chance to really own an integrated product line from literally the chemical plants that pull together the raw material all the way through the engineers and so on that help it fly in the field. That is when COVID hit. And I think, like many people, as we survived through COVID and all of the personal and professional sides of things, um, I made a life decision to consider something different. Never thought I would leave, but am so happy not only for the experience I had, but then the experience that set me up for when I came to Limbach. And as you mentioned, my title today is quite the mouthful. But when I started in this role, I actually started as the first Chief People and Culture Officer in the company. Now, at that time, what I saw was we had a great foundation, a brand within the organization. We're celebrating 125 years this year. So I saw the specialness of what it meant to work for a company that had been around for a long time. We also had great cultural foundations, great people, and we were embarking on a transformation journey to really change the business model of the company. And so, for that, and many other reasons, I made the leap, moved my family to Tampa, and we've been here ever since. So, I guess that was January of 21. So, we're coming up on 5.5 years here.
I love that. So, just so our listeners understand and have some context about all the stuff we talk about, tell us what Limbach does.
Yeah, sure. So we're a building systems solutions provider. And what that means in layman's terms is think about your mechanical, your electrical, plumbing systems in buildings, all the stuff that's really, really important that keeps the business running. We make sure all of that goes uninterrupted and working as it's supposed to. We work in commercial buildings. So you're thinking hospitals, data centers, mission critical facilities that if that building goes down, it's a significant disruption to our customers. And we do
Okay.
that across the US. We have 21 locations across the US as well.
Got it. You make that sound like it's an easy thing to do. I know it isn't from working in the
Not at all.
category a little bit. So, well done as a marketer and many other things, making that sound as easy as can be. I'm sure part of the culture is that you do actually, work hard to make it easy for your customers. So, tell us a little bit about how people, culture, and marketing fit together for you,
Yeah,
and how did it evolve from people and culture to ad marketing? Because you probably didn't have any spare time in people and
I did not.
culture, right?
I did not. So I think it's a good question. And look, this isn't the right fit for every company.
Yeah.
How you choose to organizationally design it at different companies will vary. For us, why it makes sense. At the time of our point in evolution, we were changing our business model to go toward an owner centric model. So, in construction, many times you may work with an intermediary, whether it's a general contractor or otherwise, or you might go directly to the customer. And our mission was we are best when we are working closest to the customer so we can become a deep, trusted partner and we can really help not only anticipate their needs, help them problem solve, but ultimately stay a part of their facility maintenance so that we can help them proactively be an extension of their team and help support them. So, why does that matter and how does it relate to this whole discussion? We were pivoting over toward a more owner centric model, which means not only does our talent need to change, the way we engage with our customers, the way we talk about the company, the way we sell, all of those things needed to evolve. So I was already embedded in that natural conversation as it relates to talent. Who are we going to bring in? What skills do we need? What does the customer value? How do we provide more of that in the business and to our customers? Um, at the same time, where we were evolving as a company, we're not a huge organization. So getting a full time CMO to sit at the senior leadership team really wasn't on the table at that moment. And looking at where we were going to go as a business, you cannot go where we want to go without evolving your brand concurrently. So I became a really big champion of our marketing strategy, of our brand, about how we show up, and it started in the employment brand space and continued to evolve. And ultimately, I took on the role in 2023 when I raised my hand about the same time that we had a CEO succession that was planned and took place.
Mm.
So since then, we've really reinvested into the marketing space. And in many ways, the same way I had to do that 2 years prior in the people space. So we've been able to, it's not the same playbook, but it's building and scaling a team just within a different function.
One of the questions I've asked for years based on having, the good fortune early in my career meeting somebody in the talent industry that was really good at helping you find the right fit as much as, so, a lot of people go in trying to be the chameleon of what they think the company wants rather than actually testing the company for fit as much as they're testing you. And the question is, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
Um, and it's interesting. You've been so many things.
Mhm.
What's the red thread that goes through all of it? Because I mean, engineering couldn't. I mean, I can't even remember what you called that thing you did that was the leading edge at the time.
Yeah.
It was some
Yeah.
wafer technology.
PMCs. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. EMC. Uh, like I'm sure that wasn't naturally part of your
Yeah.
CHRO kind of background. So how have you stretched and what's the red thread ultimately across all these things?
Yeah. So there's a couple pieces. First and foremost, I've always viewed myself and strive to view myself as a business leader first who happens to specialize in talent. So when I'm looking at any of the roles I've taken on, I always say that, I don't stay in a job description lane very well. I want to go where the business needs and support them in that way. And one of the reasons I've loved talent is because it provides you a very broad space to play.
Mhm.
And in some ways, I think I have the best job in the world because I literally have people, culture, and brand. And there is not one thing within a business that doesn't come back to one of those three elements. So, I get to play across the space. The other thing, in addition to being the business leader first, I like to drive impact. I like to look at where the best opportunity is, where my skills can make a difference. And I love to grow and develop the team. To me, that's where I get really excited is when I bring in folks, I have them into the business, they're developing and growing. And then one day I can step back because they've now grown to the point where they can take it forward. Like that is the part that gets me really excited. And I think I found that in every one of these roles as I've gone along.
I want to give you credit, you and the other leaders there, credit for knowing that you needed, as part of the transformation in your business model, that you needed to think
Mhm,
talent and brand,
mhm.
because a lot of organizations pivot and just muddle their way through it. And in a business that I'll link this back to, um, people buy people,
Mhm.
and ironically, culture, talent management, and marketing are, if they're doing their job right, they're all aligned around that central theme of the
Correct.
first inside and then how does that show up outside and what's the right fit. And I'm sure that the part of that business model shift was, how do you relate, and also how do you make sure you take control of your brand versus being kind of a sub,
Yeah.
and subordinate, and lose, and basically facing the risk of being a commodity play.
Yes.
So ultimately, exerting your brand and your business model and your people, giving them, arming them to succeed. Tell us how were there any bumps in the organization around embracing that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, here, change and transformation always sound really exciting. And then you got to the point where you get to roll up your sleeves and realize like all
Right.
the things that you have to do to make that happen. And to your point, we're in a people business. And I know a lot of brands will say that, companies will say that. But at the end of the day, when we have a technician show up in the facility and they are putting a facility back online because there was an urgent matter and we had to help them get it online, or we're helping to improve the efficiency, like that person is an integral part of now how that facility operates. That customer sees us through that person that showed up. And so, in many ways, our brand and our people, they're one and the same many times. So as we went through, there have been a number of different things that have been challenges. One is helping to teach our team members how to frame our brand, how to frame our business transformation, and why we were moving toward an owner centric model.
Mhm.
How that not only helped the customer, but how that also helped them. So, the team has great pride in what they do. They're saying, I like all of my customers. I want to support them all. And so trying to help them redefine like why we're looking at a certain space, why we add the most value there. That was and continues to be at times a challenge. Helping people see where they fit into the change and into the brand story too.
Yeah. Well, I think it's actually a brilliant thing in that your ability to, invite the right person culturally and competency wise into the team by inviting them to understand your culture, your belief
Oh,
system,
mhm.
and what you do, kind of in that order.
Yeah.
A lot of organizations we've worked with, we actually do what we call an ecosystem map that looks at all the functional groups to look for opportunities for misalignment. And a lot of organizations have so much separation by functional area that they don't have the same red thread or the same
Mhm.
kind of expression of what they're doing. And talent, if they're not bringing, if talent isn't bringing people in that are aligned, they'll be disappointed. They'll be frustrated. They'll be, suboptimal performers, even if they're incredibly capable. And yet, if you invite them in, we always talk about the most valuable media buy being the team
Mhm.
internally, and because you can always afford it, and yet most people don't spend on it, right? And starting with hiring and retention and culture and getting that really really right. Are there some things that you do that are just almost inherent to your way of doing things now, but that you had to stop and think, okay, there's an opportunity here, let's improve this? Are there any examples you could share?
Yeah, I think there are. I think even back to think about when somebody's being selected for a role. The natural tendency of many organizations is to look at the job, identify the functional domain expertise that they need, and really spend a lot of time digging through, do they understand the what we need to do and the transactional element? One of the things that we did early on is balance that out with the core values side of things. We've always had a really rich culture focused on our core values, but we built out simple interview tools and screening methods to really make sure we're refining what does that look like. When we went into our sales effort, we also took a look at sales competency hiring. How do we make sure we're getting the right person? What are teaching people what to listen for and what are the cues and so on and so forth. In addition, how you're onboarding teams into the organization, and so on and so forth. So we've done a number of things that now have become more natural over time. Storytelling, maybe another example. In the beginning, while we had lots of employee stories that we could talk about internally, we weren't getting the mileage out of sharing that externally. So we've really leveraged whether it's our podcast, our 1901 blog, and otherwise to share those stories outside of the company too. And what's really interesting about that over time is you recognize later how much cross channel referencing there is. So you're going to have an employee who's tapping into, one channel. I'll have investors who are listening in to employee stories in another. A customer is listening in to a story on our 125th anniversary, and that whole thing together is just, how do you bring it together to maximize what you're already doing in a visible way to all your various stakeholders?
Yeah, it's a lot of unfortunately, some marketing teams, especially in public companies like yours,
Mhm.
don't necessarily even have responsibility over investor
True.
kind of, communications. And I always felt like that's a miss because they're people, they're humans.
Yeah.
They have the same senses as everybody else. Although some could argue that with some investors, but I mean, we're all humans, right? And the ability to attend to them and to relate them as a human first, and then secondarily where they sit in the ecosystem, because our caveman brain is actually the part that we have to serve first, and then we have to move out to the more context specific stuff. So there's always an opportunity there, and in looking at some of the blog content that I saw out there that you guys do, I could see where that does triple
Mhm.
duty or more. And
Yeah.
it moves around topically to do that. And even some of the panels you've had,
Mhm.
where it's multidiscipline conversations, really smart. I like that a lot.
Yeah, and when you think about it, when we first started down this path, we had separate internal communications, external communications, investor relations, and so forth. And we've really worked hard to harmonize our messaging. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to say the exact same words to every audience.
Yeah.
There has to be a thread that ties all the way through those things. Our employees are investors too often,
Right.
right? So they're wearing dual hats, our customers, and so on and so forth. So while we tailor them to the personas, we very much try to have a common through and work cross functionally within our team to simplify the message externally. So
Yeah.
whether that's with the finance team on IR, whether that's through my people and culture in internal comm side, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. So we've talked a lot about the internal stuff and how you've really helped that come to life. One of our fundamental beliefs as as a marketer group, is that customer satisfaction is one of the principal drivers of business success. And we get asked all the time, especially in B2B, to improve lower funnel pipeline
Mhm.
and volume and velocity. And the first thing we look at is customer satisfaction, because happy people do two things. They complete the process, so they're financially valuable, but more importantly, they become advocates,
Mhm.
either overtly or so almost just through peer-to-peer contact. um, do you have how do you listen to your customers from a satisfaction perspective? And then tell us a little bit about your social proof program, where you kind of shine a light on the good work you've done for clients and the way it's worked really successfully to their benefit.
Yeah, sure. So I would say we have items in place, but this is an area I would like to continue to learn and grow in within our team. Today, we leverage a lot of our internal employees to help us capture the voice of the customer. So we are constantly working with our internal teams on what are you hearing, what's resonating, how can we adjust, etc. We also have done a decent amount of work on our journey mapping. Take our more recent website that we just redesigned, and trying to make sure that we're paying attention to how that's being utilized. What does the heat map look like? What are the things that are our top hits, whether that's on the website, whether it's content through the blog, and so on and so forth? Like, how do we understand what our customers are desiring and then be more proactive in providing it to them? We also take a look in particular through our sales teams when we think about top customer growth and how we can continue to grow our established customers. Because again, our goal is to be that one stop shop for a customer that's the trusted partner that they can go back to. So, do we see customer growth occurring in various markets or in certain verticals? That's normally how we're pulling it together. I think we can in the future take it to the next level at more direct customer engagement and so on in the future, but we haven't quite gotten there yet.
Got it.
Mhm.
um, this is beyond the brief. Beyond the brief, the spirit of where that came from was that we all write these things called briefs or marketing plans, and inevitably, when we get into executing, something comes out of nowhere that is almost unexpected, that makes the work better or different or stronger or more on point. Do you have any examples of that, where something, you learn something from things going on in the market or from somebody on the team, that strategically helped you
Mhm.
really dial in on the work? And a lot of the times it's actually what I refer to as marketing adjacent actions. So it's not even an ad or an event or a trade show booth or a page on the site. It's something much more nuanced than that. Could be a post engagement follow up, or who knows what.
Mhm.
Any examples come to mind?
Yeah, I think there's one that we're exploring actually right now, and it really gets to the concept of purpose. When you think about why a company exists in the first place, um, people, if you think about from like an employment brand perspective, they want to know they're part of something much bigger than what the job description says. And our team has really been taking a look into the purpose of the company. We're here to enable the future of advanced technology. we're not just working in a data center. We're enabling the future of the advanced technology. We're here helping save lives. We work at cancer hospitals and so on and so forth. And we were in digging into employee stories. And what we kept hearing is, wow, like, I got to work on a hospital where XYZ occurred in my personal life. I had a baby there, or this cancer center treated someone in my family, and that higher calling of purpose. We work in higher education, right? We're shaping the belief system of the world. Think about the manufacturing setting. We're bringing great new products that haven't existed to life, right? So I think, while we were in looking for proof points on the employment brand, let's say, what we got more of is a step deeper into the why of why we work. And ultimately, I think that draws you then closer to what your customer
Mhm.
wants at the end of the day. We're here to enable their mission. So in our space, it's how do we draw that two-step leap to help people connect to the overall mission. And I think that's been really impactful. But I think we could take that to a whole new level. And frankly, our employees taught us that by
Yeah,
us going and having these conversations from them. And
I
that
could
was something that I didn't expect. That wasn't an idea that I came up with. Our team came up with it.
I love that. I could totally see that because it's, all these different disciplines, whether you're an oncologist or a educator or whatever, they have their own superpowers,
Mhm.
but you help them have a stage and a place that gives their full potential the opportunity to shine,
Yes.
regardless of what category it's in, right? That
Yes.
totally makes sense, and I could see where that would come out of what you do, right? Because
Yeah.
you're literally prepping the stage for them to perform.
Correct.
So
And if we don't do our job, they can't perform.
that's right.
You can't operate an ICU if our systems aren't up and running. And it's our mission to make sure that they're not in a position where that ever is the case.
Yep. So as the marketplace evolves, because the way offices and facilities look these days is
Mhm.
changing. The number of humans involved, the frequency of them showing up is evolving. All those things. How are you guys playing offense to kind of support the evolution in the marketplace?
Yeah, great question. So, I think that's part of why we really honed in on who our target customer is over the last number of years. So because we focus on mission critical environments, we don't often go after things like office environments or otherwise. So when you think about a durability perspective in the model, we're always going to need hospitals and key infrastructure. If you look at the data center market right now, that's booming, that's on everybody's front page all the time. When you look at some of those core vertical markets, they are very steady and durable. So, for that reason, from a strategic perspective, we haven't been as impacted in that
Yeah.
space.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, I want to go back to you were touching on purpose in terms of internally, and you talked about the employer brand. Do you have a uh, indoctrination and welcoming system that includes mission, vision, values, or is it purpose and why? And how's that show up? Because a lot of organizations that have the mission, vision, and values and those kinds of things feel performative
Uh-huh.
and almost disconnected, almost so aspirational, or should be a black a brass plaque in the hallway rather than a belief system that you can feel and touch and
Yeah.
contribute to. How's that work for you guys?
Yeah, so for us, it as I mentioned, we try to use our core values, let's say, as the thread that connects from the recruiting side all the way through the employee experience and ultimately to all of our stakeholders. So it's going to be in the hiring process. They're going to hear about it. We're going to talk about it. It's included in the onboarding process. It's embedded into how we hold people accountable from a performance perspective, and so on and so forth. When I joined the company, I spent, goodness, hundreds of hours out in the business trying to listen to everyone. And the number one thing that I heard time and time again is we care. And we call it our top core value. That's really the foundation of our company, and you could just hear the stories that were told. I was in a roundtable recently and I asked, tell me about the proof points that exist. How would you know that the values come alive? And employees were going around and kind of giving their version and their story of it. So um, I think we bring it to life in kind of the everyday perspective
Mhm.
as well. We do things like tie our recognition internally to our core values. Employees can nominate peers and in front of the CEO and everybody have a chance to share why they nominated that person and hold up their peer. Those are the types of things that we try to do to make it really special and not something that's just sitting up on the wall.
Gotcha, gotcha. Um, from a marketing perspective, my guess is that your marketing mix is a bit, unique given the category you're in and, that it's B2B and there's lots of different verticals. You've got lots of different audiences to attend to, and I bet the buying committee is quite diverse, right? It's
Yes,
everything
it
from
is.
investors, sometimes boards, senior leadership and operations people, and even in some cases, multiple partners that need to participate in the build, project-wise. Um, so, uh talk to us about that a little bit. Tell us how that all fits together for you.
Yeah, sure. So, in our current space, we try to simplify it into a couple of key personas that we're
Yep.
looking at. So, first and foremost, we're looking again, that ideal customer is going to be the mission critical commercial customer that happens to be focused on, the six core verticals that we operate in. In addition to that, we're gonna have 2 different levels. So, within our space, it is typical that the operating, expenses, your OpEx is gonna be spent by your facilities managers and so on. So, those are the folks that are in the local businesses, keeping the lights on, keeping it running. They gotta make sure that everything has great uptime and that it's performing at its operational efficiency. So that's a segment that we focus on as well. However, the larger capital investments that are typically made are made by a very different audience at the top of the house. And it's typically done, again, by a buying committee. And they're looking at the total footprint and saying, where's the biggest bang for my buck? Where am I going to invest? And what am I going to get as a return for that? So, those are two very different customers that you have to satisfy. More recently, we've reorganized our company. While we have 21 offices and they are out with our customers every day at that OPEX spend level, we also have created a national team, and their job is helping to connect the dots across our network. In some cases, we may have customers that are serviced out of many different locations. How do we help solve the customer need where they want one stop shop? They don't wanna go to every single location and deal with a different team. They wanna go to one place across the entire platform. So those are really how we think about, servicing our customer. I'm sure there's variation in between, but those are kind of
Sure.
the big groups.
Got it. That makes sense. Over the last, 12 to 18 months, are there any marketing things that you've slowed or are not doing as much as you used to? And are there specific things that you're doing now that you hadn't done historically? And
Mhm.
kind of what are those?
Yeah. I'd say, because we've been growing and expanding our marketing strategy, most of them is net new, if
Mhm.
I think about it that way.
Yep.
We've talked about the integrated communications. I mentioned before we're celebrating 125th anniversary. We relocated our headquarters to Tampa officially this year after spending 125 awesome years headquartered in Pittsburgh. Um, we've done a full revamp of our brand imagery, the website, how we show up, and social strategy. We've also been much more intentional over the last couple of years at looking at our earned media and PR side of the house. And how do we continue to elevate our thought leadership out externally so that our customers see us in a different light than maybe in the past? And so on. So, it's been a lot of net new. um, we've also been working hard to really make sure that we are working on our internal messaging with our teams and their ability to translate that to the customer as well.
Got it.
There's a
Got it.
lot there's a lot of net new in a
Right.
new growing space.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Um, how is AI
Mhm.
factored into what you do internally
Yeah.
and the way that you're kind of approaching things?
Yeah, good question. So, right now, I think everybody is trying to figure out where and how does this thing fit in. And, there's AI, I feel like plugged into just about every tool that you use these days. One of the areas we're really focusing on is how do we take market intelligence externally that we
Mhm.
have and pair that with internal data. And I won't claim that we have it all figured out. But I think that is a key area we're taking a look at. I mean, we're doing the typical things that you would anticipate, right? It's helping us do better from a communication standpoint, make sure we're doing the right um, checks against audience and how we're communicating and all of those things, whether that's internal, external, idea generation, cutting, making things more efficient, all of those things. But the thing that I'm most excited about is if we can take our internal data, what we have in our CRM, all the things that we know about our customers, and then we can pair that with some real time external market analytics and data.
Mm.
I think it could help us be smarter in where to spend and where to point our resources for the biggest return.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It is one of the superpowers of AI is that it can aggregate lots of things quickly for you. What
Yes.
used to take time
Mhm.
and several people can now be done almost automated and give
Yes.
you a recency factor that you didn't used to have, because you can listen much more effectively that way. That's
Correct,
smart.
right.
Yeah.
So, where you're used to, quarterly reports now can become, down to the day, month, etc. And when you're trying to pivot and evolve an organization, that time recency becomes really, really important to make sure
Indeed.
you're acting on the most recent data and making the right assumptions.
Well, and the beauty of it is it allows you to be in sync with the way people are now wired, right? Because of social media, we're, seconds away from any occurrence being known.
Yes.
And to be able to do that, especially in the B2B space, because it 10 years ago, B2B stuff was very slow moving and very much about speeds and feeds and kind of data consistency rather than more inspiration and awareness of kind of where people were emotionally, which is part of the joy of it today. You've as an organization, but also as an individual, you've had a lot of recognition and awards, and you've done speaking engagements and podcasts and blogs. How's that all fit together for you, and how has that come to be for your organization and for
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. I'll be the first to say it's not my default. I typically would put my head down and get work done and I want to continue inside the business making stuff happen. But in taking this role, I think what I realized is I really want to recognize our team. Um so whether it's, we've gotten awards on talent and training development, I'm really excited about that kind of stuff. Our team built it literally from scratch. 95% of it's designed in house. And I know the humans that put in all the work to make that stuff happen. When I look at some of the employment brand awards and things like that, that's a reflection on every leader we have, every individual contributor. And people feel a huge sense of pride about that. Also, on the speaking side, we've got to get out and tell our story. I think we are a best kept secret, if you will, to some extent. We've been around 125 years, but we're not the people we were 125 years ago.
Right.
So if we're not out telling the story and the brand and talking about our people and all of those types of things, how will anyone know? So I have taken it on as a personal item to make sure that I'm out engaging with others and improving our brand recognition and giving credit to the people who have done a lot of really hard work to
Yeah.
make it happen.
Well, and just a general reflection, your brand name doesn't if you're not aware of what you guys do and where you fit in the world, it doesn't evoke that, right? It doesn't
Right.
naturally, so it takes a fair amount of effort to have it become an adjective. Now we Google things. Before it was this, what is a Google, right?
Yeah.
Why are you saying that word? That's weird. Um, so there's definitely an opportunity there. Certainly, in the people in the category would,
Yes,
can embrace it that way, and internally people can too, which is part of the beauty of and the power of marketing if done right. Um,
it is.
for
And
sure.
I have to say, it's really fun. I spoke to someone the other day I was interviewing, and they've known us for a long time in the space. And I always love to say, "Why'd you take our call? Like, why were you interested?" And what I've continued to hear most recently is, "I'm so intrigued by what you are doing over there.
Yeah.
You're not the company that you were, back in time 10 years ago, 20 years ago that I remember. I've been following you. This is really kind of interesting. I'd have an interest in being part of building something that's new and different."
Yeah.
And that also gives me a little bit of data point to, okay, our brand story is changing. The narrative is changing. We're evoking interest in people who, hey, I thought you were this, but now I'm hearing all these other things. That's kind of cool. I'd love to hear more um, as well. So it's been really fun to watch that come full circle.
I love it. Um, Along your journey, your many journeys,
Mhm.
of all the people I've talked to now, a couple hundred different guests, which has been awesome. You're probably the most unique in that you've had such diverse
Mm.
roles in very different industries. Tell us a little bit about some of the mentors and advisors and, folks that have been really meaningful to you in your journey.
Yeah. So I 100% would not be sitting in this seat if I didn't have mentors along the way. And honestly, some very tough love too along the way. So, I mean, starting early, think about, I would maybe be a psychologist somewhere if someone hadn't pointed me on a different path and I hadn't been willing to go listen to what they were pointing me to. I was really blessed early in my career, and part of this is how GE treats their HR function to be exposed to very senior leaders in my entry level roles.
Wow.
So I got a chance to work with people that, I mean, I looked at every day thinking, oh my goodness, maybe I could do something like that one day. Wouldn't that be great? And they took time to invest in me all along the way. And I could go through probably a dozen people, whether they were engineering leaders who took an interest in me and taught me about the business. There were HR folks that brought me in along the way, and everyone in between. Even had a chance to work for a CMO at one point as his HR person, which was hugely helpful. Um, but there's one mentor probably that stands head and shoulders out. He's actually the individual at GE that brought me over into the engineering team. I worked directly in his team for 10 years, and he gave me a lot of tough love. He saw more in me than I saw in myself, and he would spend countless hours with me, really helping me, as he said, rewire my brain and help me
Mhm.
think differently about business, about people, and so on. He cared personally, which I've tried to take forward. And part of, frankly, why I love our core values so much is that we care aspect. He cared not just about the worker that was there getting stuff done, but about the entirety of life and what I he cared what I wanted to get out of life, right? And so I really believe that you have an obligation to pay it forward. Those that have invested in you did that with the intention that you're going to go do that for others. And I think that's why I love building and growing teams and watching them grow. And there's nothing more satisfying than seeing somebody take on a role that they didn't know that they can do and they knock it out of the park.
Yeah, I
So,
love that. I love that. Melissa, fascinating career and fascinating conversation today. In closing, is there a little known fact about you that you would care to share?
yeah. There's all sorts, but maybe one. So I am an avid yogi. So
Ah,
most people don't know that. I've spent about 30 years doing yoga, meditation, and so forth. And why I think it's relevant In a fast paced business world, as an executive, et cetera, you have a lot going on. And to this day, that is the one and only way that I can quiet the hamster wheel of my mind,
Yeah.
and get just a minute of reprieve and kind of connect back into, okay, let me get back to a space. What's most important? What's going to move the business forward? So you can find me in a hot yoga class, clear my mind. That hour, hour and a half, that's my Zen time. So,
Hot yoga too. Holy
oh yeah,
cow. That's a whole different level right
yeah.
there. I love
I
it.
I don't do things halfway. So that is for sure. So, all
Melissa, that's fantastic. Well, thank you again for being with us today. And
right.
we'll have to do a reprise of this in a year or so and
Okay.
catch up and see what the latest is. But again, thank you so much for your time today.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, and with that, we'll wrap up another episode of Beyond the Brief. As always, stay tuned. There always is more that we stumble across it from somewhere. It comes out from like the most surprising place. That's why we call it Beyond the Brief. Thanks for listening and take care.